2 Samuel chapter 21. And there was a famine in the days of David for 3 years, year next to year. And David sought the face of the Lord. And the Lord said, Against Saul and against his house is the iniquity, in the death of his bloodshed, for which he put to death the Gibeonites. And the king called the Gibeonites and spoke to them. And the Gibeonites were not from out of the sons of Israel, for they were of the remnants of the Amorites. But the sons of Israel swore an oath to them. But Saul sought to strike them in his zeal for the sons of Israel and Judah. And David said to the Gibeonites, What shall I do for you? And by what means shall I atone? And you shall bless the inheritance of the Lord. And the Gibeonites said to him, There is not a problem with us over silver, nor gold with Saul and with his house. And there is not to us a man to put to death from out of all Israel. And he said, What you say, even I will do for you. And they said to the king, The man who finished us off entirely and pursued us, who misled to utterly destroy us, we shall remove him, so that he is not established in any border of Israel. Give to us 7 men from out of his sons, and we will hang them in the sun to the Lord in Gibeah of Saul, chosen of the Lord. And the king said, I will give them. And the king spared for Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, on account of the oath of the Lord between them, even between David and between Jonathan, the son of Saul. And the king took the 2 sons of Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, whom she bore to Saul, Armoni and Mephibosheth, and the 5 sons of Michal, daughter of Saul, whom she bore to Adriel, son of Barzillai, the Meholahite, and he gave them into the hand of the Gibeonites. And they hung them in the sun in the mountain before the Lord, and they fell there the 7 together, and they were put to death in days of harvest at first, at the beginning of the barley harvest. And Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth, and she strew a bed for herself upon the rock from the beginning of the barley harvest, until of which time waters dripped upon them from God from out of heaven. And she did not allow the birds of the heaven to rest upon them by day, nor the wild beasts of the field by night. And it was reported to David, all as much as Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, concubine of Saul, did. And David went and took the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son from the men of Jabesh-Gilead, of the ones stealing them from the square of Bethshan, of the Philistines hanging them there in the day in which the Philistines struck Saul in Gilboa. And he bore from there the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son, and gathered the bones of the ones hanging in the sun. And he entombed the bones of Saul and Jonathan his son, and the bones of the ones being exposed to the sun in the land of Benjamin, in the side of the hill, in the tomb of Kish his father. And they did all as much as the king gave charge, and God heeded the land after these things. And there was still war against the Philistines with Israel. And David went down, and his servants with him, and waged war with the Philistines. And David grew faint. And Ishbi of Nob, who was among the progeny of the one of Rapha, and the weight of his spear was 300 shekels scale weight of brass, and he was being girded with a truncheon, even considered to strike David. And Abishai, son of Zeruiah, helped him, and he struck the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David swore by an oath, saying, You shall not come forth still with us into battle, that in no way the lamp of Israel should be extinguished. And it came to pass after these things, war was still with the Philistines in Nob. Then Sibbechai, the Hushathite, struck the ones assembling of the descendants of the giants. And there was still war with the Philistines in Nob. And Elhanan, son of Jeroorgim, the Bethlehemite, struck Goliath the Gittite, and the wood of his spear was as the beam of a loom of one weaving. And there was still war in Gath. And there was a man from out of Madon, and the fingers of his hands and the toes of his feet were 6 and 6, 24 in number. And indeed he was born to the Rapha. And he berated Israel. And Jonathan, son of Shemaiah, brother of David, struck him. These 4 were born to descendants of the giants in Gath, to the house of Rapha, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his bondmen.